As the sun began its descent behind the darkening hills, casting long, sinister shadows across the suburban streets, I prepared myself for another evening of babysitting. The Thompsons had been my regular clients for over a year, and their two children, Emily and Jacob, had grown quite fond of me. Little did I know that this particular night would be unlike any other I had experienced in my babysitting career. I arrived at the Thompsons' cozy, two-story home shortly before dinner. Mrs. Thompson, a petite woman with a kind smile, greeted me at the door, thanking me for coming. She and Mr. Thompson were going to a charity event, and they would be home by midnight. "Emily and Jacob should be ready for bed by 9 p.m., she said, handing me a small notebook with emergency numbers and instructions. "Just make sure they're in their pajamas and have brushed their teeth. They're pretty easy to manage." I had settled into the living room, flipping through the TV channels as the kids, Emily and Jacob, played quietly upstairs. A chilly breeze rustled the curtains, and I shivered. The atmosphere inside the house felt peculiar, as though something were amiss, but I brushed it off as nerves. As the clock in the living room chimed 9, I decided it was time to get the kids ready for bed. I climbed the creaking stairs to their rooms, knocking gently on the door of the first one. "Emily, it's time for bed," I said softly. But there was no response, only eerie silence. I opened the door slowly, and to my horror, the room was empty. The only thing left behind was an open window, curtains flapping in the wind. Panic surged through me, and I rushed to Jacob's room, praying that he would be there. Again the room was empty, and the window was wide open. My heart raced as fear clawed its way up my throat. What was happening? The kids couldn't have gone far. It had been a matter of seconds since I'd last seen them. My frantic search throughout the house yielded no results. The panic escalated, and I grabbed the phone to call the Thompsons. Mr. Thompson's voice was stern as he assured me that the kids were probably just playing a prank on me. "We'll be home soon, and we'll deal with it then," he said. But his words did little to ease my anxiety. I continued to search the house, calling out for the children. It was then that I noticed the eerie silence that enveloped the entire neighborhood. The usual sounds of distant traffic and chirping crickets were gone, leaving me in an unsettling hush. The house seemed to grow colder, and I felt watched, as if something lurked in the shadows, just out of sight. As the clock ticked on, the Thompsons' absence began to gnaw at me. I decided to step outside, hoping to spot the kids in the yard, or perhaps they had come back while I was searching the house. The moon cast an eerie glow over the backyard, revealing a sight that sent a chill down my spine. Emily and Jacob were standing at the far end of the yard, facing away from me. They stood so still it was as if they were frozen in place. "Emily, Jacob," I called out, taking hesitant steps towards them. The twins remained motionless, not acknowledging my presence. Fear clenched my chest as I reached out to touch Jacob's shoulder. And that's when they turned to face me. Their eyes were hollow voids of darkness, devoid of any emotion. Their faces contorted into sinister smiles, exposing rows of sharp, serrated teeth. A guttural, inhuman growl emanated from their throats as they lunged towards me, their unnatural speed catching me off guard. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet and falling to the ground. With each passing second, the children drew closer, their grotesque grins growing wider as they reached out for me. In that terrifying moment, I realized that these were not the children I had known. They were something else, something malevolent and otherworldly. As I scrambled to my feet and sprinted back into the house, I could hear their eerie, echoing laughter following me. The house had transformed into a labyrinth of shadows, the walls closing in on me as I desperately sought refuge. I knew I had to find a way to protect myself from the relentless pursuit of the children. The notebook Mrs. Thompson had given me held a list of emergency numbers. Perhaps one of them could help. But as I reached for the notebook, I realized that it was no longer in my pocket. It had disappeared, leaving me with a deep sense of hopelessness. My last hope had been snatched away, and I was trapped in this nightmarish nightmare. In a final act of desperation, I barricaded myself in the bathroom, praying that it would provide some semblance of safety. As I huddled in the corner, the children's sinister laughter grew louder, echoing through the house, sending shivers down my spine. Hours passed in that small, dimly lit bathroom, the laughter and growls gradually fading away. The house fell silent once more, and my fear began to give way to exhaustion. I couldn't stay hidden forever, and I knew I had to face whatever lurked in the darkness. Summoning every ounce of courage I had left, I cautiously opened the bathroom door and ventured out into the house. To my relief, the house seemed to have returned to its normal state, and the unsettling silence had dissipated. There was no sign of Emily and Jacob. The Thompsons arrived home shortly thereafter, and I hesitated to share my horrifying ordeal. I finally mustered the courage to tell them about the children's transformation, their sinister grins, and the nightmarish chase. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson exchanged concerned glances, but offered no explanation or apology. As I left their home that night, I couldn't help but wonder if they knew more than they were letting on. I never babysat for the Thompsons again, and the memory of that harrowing night haunted me for years to come. The experience left me with a chilling belief that sometimes the darkest and most terrifying things can happen in the most ordinary of places, with the people you thought you knew the best.